It's up!
Hi, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Ugranik sparing with you guys. Lots of news to get to, so let's just get to it.
Let's just get to it. Unfortunately, we are now thoroughly engaged in an ever-expanding war in the Middle East. Let's get to the details.
President Biden yesterday called this attack on those U.S. forces despicable and wholly unjust. And now he and his team are working towards deciding how exactly the U.S. will respond. In a statement mourning the death of those 3 U.S. service members, the president said, quote, "We will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing."
President Joe Biden blames Iran and is promising to retaliate against them after 3 US troops were killed in an overnight drone strike in northeast Jordan near the Syrian border. Now, if you're wondering what US forces were doing in Jordan in the first place, a lot of people were asking that question after this news broke. We'll get into the details on that in just a moment. Now, dozens more of our service members were injured in the attack, some of whom had severe injuries, including traumatic brain damage as a result of this drone strike. Now, US Central Command said at least 34 troops were injured by the one-way attack drone, with 8 flown out of Jordan for follow-up care. Those were the individuals who were severely injured as a result. It described the 8 as being in stable condition, so that's a good update on the news. Now, the large drone struck, I should say, a logistics support base in Jordan known as Tower 22. It is along the Syrian border, as I mentioned earlier, and it's used largely by US troops involved in the advise and assist mission for Jordanian forces. Now, Central Command said approximately 350 US Army and Air Force personnel were deployed at this particular base in Jordan. The 3 who were killed, and 3 people were killed, and then most of the individuals, Army soldiers in particular, were wounded, and US troops have used Jordan, a kingdom bordering Iraq, Israel, and the Palestinian territory of the West Bank, Saudi Arabia, and Syria as a basing point. Some 3,000 American troops typically are stationed across Jordan, not just this particular base, but across Jordan. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the troops were deployed there to work for the lasting defeat of ISIS. 3 officials said the drone struck near the troops' sleeping quarters, which they said explained the high casualty count. And just about half an hour ago, the Wall Street Journal did some additional reporting on this story and noted that the reason why it was difficult for the US to strike that drone before it hit its targets is because there was a US drone returning to the base at the same time, which they confused for the unfortunate drone that was seeking to attack them. Now, Biden, who is traveling in South Carolina, asked for a moment of silence during an appearance at a Baptist church's banquet hall. He then basically made clear that he plans to retaliate. Let's watch.
We had a tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
And I'm asking for a moment of silence for all 3 of those falls.
Jesus.
And we shall respond.
Now, that's terrible audio. It's difficult to hear, so I just want to reiterate what he said. We had a tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases, and we shall respond. Biden said in a written statement that the United States will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing. And I should note that Iran has denied taking part in this attack. And even today, the United States does not have confirmation on which militant group ordered the attack, but we do know that the drone was coming from Iraq. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so he says that it was wholly unjust. It makes it sound like it just came up out of nowhere. I mean, we were just minding our business in the Middle East, and all of a sudden these awful, terrible Muslims just attack us out of nowhere, because that's their nature. No, we bombed a militia that we think is connected to Iran in Iraq, though it's in Iraq, and we bombed it and we killed their leader. And they have now taken responsibility for this drone strike. Now, do we know for sure that it was them? No, we don't know for sure, right? But they did take responsibility, and we did kill their leader, and we did bomb them. So this, but you almost never see that. Like, I got to it in like paragraph 28 in one of the articles that I read. The rest of it makes it seem like, well, golly gee, we're just minding our business, and all of a sudden somebody bombs us and kills us. No one could have seen this. Oh, we got to strike back hard. Okay, we have to strike back hard. So everybody says that because we're all heartbroken over those 3 guys who died. They're Americans. We love them. We didn't want them to die, right? But are we convinced striking back hard is going to solve the problem? I mean, striking them hard in the first place is what created the problem. So, okay, we're gonna strike harder, and then when they bomb us again and kill more of us, we'll all act surprised again. Like, I don't know where this came from. Nobody could have seen this coming. I mean, we're just busy killing them all, and then they had the temerity to kill some of us back. And now we're just dumbfounded by it. I thought that if we had killed enough of them, they would finally be obedient to us and know that we are superior to them. And that they should all listen to Israel, and they should all know when they're occupied and be a good, docile population who's abused for the rest of time. I don't know why they're so upset. They say with a straight face, and the reporters write it down. Oh yeah, could be. I can't tell.
I think the real question is, does the United States government care about the lives of our service members?
I don't even think that's a question. Of course they don't.
Because if they did, they would maybe reconsider how easily they send them abroad to fight Israel's war for them. Let's keep it real. And the attacks against members of our military have increased since the October 7th attacks. And as we know, the Biden administration sent more of our soldiers over to that region of the world in an effort to deter an expansion of this war to a regional war, but all we've seen so far is an expansion of war in that region. In fact, let's take a look at this graphic and I'll explain what we're looking at. So this is actually a graphic that was made by Fox News, but I thought they did a good job pinpointing the various attacks that US soldiers have been dealing with since October 17th. There have been at least 159 attacks on US forces. And so according to the Associated Press, Iran-backed militias have struck American military installations in Iraq more than 60 times and in Syria more than 90 times with a mix of drones, rockets, mortars, and ballistic missiles. The attack on Sunday was the first targeting American troops in Jordan during the Israel-Hamas war and the first to result in the loss of American lives. And considering the rhetoric that we're hearing from the Biden administration, it appears that we are headed straight for a war with Iran, which would be absolutely disastrous, which is something that the American people don't want, which could be absolutely devastating for the men and women in our military. And I'll explain why with some statistics to back it up. Now, an umbrella group for Iran-backed factions known as the Islamic Resistance in Iraq earlier claimed launching explosive drone attacks targeting 3 areas in Syria, as well as one inside of occupied Palestine. The group has claimed responsibility for dozens of attacks against bases housing US troops in Iraq and Syria since the Israel-Hamas war began. 3 officials with Iran-backed militias in Iraq who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the matter with journalists said the drone attack against the base in Jordan was launched by one of the Iraqi groups. No faction at that point had officially claimed responsibility. And I want to reiterate, while it appears that the United States wants to pin this on Iran, and Iran does back these militant groups with weapons and things like that, there is still no evidence that Iran ordered this attack. It's very similar to what happened in the aftermath of the October 7th Hamas atrocities in Israel. The Wall Street Journal fell over itself to report that Iran had ordered those attacks. There was no evidence of that, and and Wall Street Journal ended up with egg on its face. So if you want to criticize Iran for providing weaponry to these militant groups, that's fine. But you can't just automatically assume that Iran has ordered these very specific attacks against US military in Jordan.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the main issue at all. If you go punch someone in the face and they punch you back, you can't pretend to be surprised. And you can't say, okay, that's why I did. Oh, you punched me back, then that's why I have to murder you and your entire family. No, that's not self-defense. So, okay, why am I saying what we're doing in the Middle East is not self-defense? First of all, Israel's been occupying the Palestinians for 75 years.
But that's okay, they get to do that.
So open air prison for 5 million people, it's an open sore in the middle of the Middle East. Every Muslim hates that the Palestinians are occupied. But no, that's got nothing to do with anything. I mean, look at the absurdities in American media. So if you're an American and you've never heard people like us telling you the truth, yeah, it turns out occupying people, they don't love it. And keeping them in open air prisons and then humiliating them on a daily basis, arresting them, murdering them, etc. Turns out they're not fans of it. Wow, what a big thing. In American media, that's like a big revelation. Okay, and so then we go on top of that. Now, Netanyahu has killed 20 times the number of civilians as Hamas has. But Hamas are terrorists, but Netanyahu isn't. The right-wing government of Israel isn't. And Israel has bombed Gaza and Lebanon, God knows where else, I think in Syria as well. We bombed Syria and Iraq and Yemen. But you see how they're the aggressors? We're bombing all over the Middle East. And then we put up a graphic saying how many times we've been attacked. You know, why are they attacking us? Because we attacked first.
It doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? That's the point. And the way that this has been reported makes it appear as though, oh my God, innocent America keeps getting attacked. Innocent Israel keeps getting attacked. What spurred the attacks in the first place, and why are we risking the lives of our soldiers in the Middle East as we speak on behalf of Israel, which, by the way, has been aching for the United States to fight their war for them in Iran? And the reason why, Cenk, what I said about Iran is important is because that's what we're barreling toward. We're barreling toward a war with Iran, which would be disastrous on so many different levels, considering their military capability and how many troops we would need on the ground to even have, honestly, a hope of, I guess, defeating Iran. And what would that look like? What happens after you defeat Iran?
No, you guys, look, this is, the people in Washington are mentally ill. And our democracy is sick right now, and we're trying to help recover, but it's having trouble getting past the sickness. The sickness is corruption, legalized bribes. So the defense contractors, the Israeli lobby, the oil companies, etc., want a giant war in the Middle East because they're all going to profit from it.
And we're going to get it. And we're going to get it.
And Netanyahu has said, brazenly, openly, dozens of times, including in an interview he did with Piers Morgan's network just today, saying, yeah, I want America to fight our war for us. He says, why isn't America fighting the war? They've got to fight it more. They have to attack Iran and they have to attack Yemen, etc. Who the hell are you? Look, I know some people catch feelings over it, but sorry, we never elected him. He's not the boss of us.
Why do our troops need to spill their blood on behalf of Israel? Can someone explain that to me?
Yeah, exactly. You want to occupy 5 million people forever, and you want to oppress and humiliate them, that's your business. I hate it. I don't view you as that. Where's the ally? Where's the ally? Oh, I inflamed the entire Muslim world, 1.6 billion people against you, America. You see what a great ally I am? No, I don't. I actually don't at all. And no one's ever given any evidence of Israel helping America at all with one goddamn thing, except they say, no, they share with us the intelligence we need to kill Muslims on their behalf. Wow, what a big help. Oh, you've been so generous, I didn't know. So look guys, the why I say the people in Washington are mentally ill is because over 3/4 of Americans do not want a war with Iran. Go ahead, poll it. So first of all, 2/3 already want a ceasefire in Gaza, but a war with Iran, they have 4 times the landmass of Iraq. They have twice the population of Iraq. And I know everybody thinks we're invincible, although we just got our asses handed to us in Afghanistan and Iraq. But we're not invincible. Iran has a significant military, and look at what one drone did. One tiny little drone that costs almost nothing. Do you know how many drones Iran has if Iran wants to unleash their drones? Let alone their missiles, let alone their ships, let alone their mines. You think it's bad in the Red Sea now because a couple of Houthi rebels are firing rockets? Iran could put mines all over the Red Sea and make it completely unpassable. They could sink. You think they can't sink our ships?
This is so
Do you know how
crazy.
many Americans are gonna die so Netanyahu can occupy the Palestinians for a couple more years?
Who cares? They're just American lives. They're not precious IDF lives. IDF, they lose 24 people in one day and it's a massive tragedy. But when it comes to American soldiers risking their lives on behalf of Israel so they can do what they're doing to the Palestinians, who cares? No number is too high, right? And by the way, another note, and this is from Jordan Cohen from the Cato Institute. He notes that analysts estimate that any ground invasion into Iran would require 1.6 million US troops. So, I mean, are American troops cool with that? Are they cool with being deployed, possibly being deployed for a ground invasion into Iran if it comes to that? Because the analysts also say that simply doing an invasion through the air, through the sea, that's not gonna be enough. You would need a ground invasion to defeat Iran. So the other thing I wanna just quickly mention is how the State Department really doesn't like answering some difficult questions about this matter. Because State Department spokesperson John Kirby was recently asked some tough questions by an Al Jazeera journalist about whether the Biden administration has any interest in working with Congress and consulting with Congress before carrying out some of the military operations he's considering. So let's take a look at how Kirby answered that question.
The president was sent a letter on Friday from a bipartisan group of lawmakers, and he had been accused of unauthorized strikes against the Houthis and by bypassing Congress. They said no president, regardless of political party, has the constitutional authority to bypass Congress on matters of war. Do you think that that would apply here, given this escalation?
We're not at war with the Houthis. We're not looking for a war with Iran. The president is comfortable that he has the appropriate legal authorities to act in self-defense of our ships, our sailors, and our troops in our facilities at sea or shore.
Right. Isn't it time to involve the American people? I mean, given the fact that the American people were not happy about,
I suspect the American people are not happy about attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. I also suspect they're not happy about seeing American troops killed at a base in Jordan. The president has the authority to defend those troops in those facilities, and he'll do that.
So it is interesting because here you have Kirby speaking on behalf of the American people who have been calling for a ceasefire almost since the beginning of this war. But Kirby knows better. Kirby knows what's actually in our hearts and minds, and he believes that we want to give Biden full authority, unilateral control over expanding this war. And by the way, one other thing I'll just note, we are at war with the Houthis. Don't let them lie to you. We are literally bombing Yemen as we speak because of our war with the Houthis. I don't know why they think we're idiots and we don't see what's happening.
Yeah. That whole scene was a joke. So it's all theater, guys. So Kirby says the president doesn't check polls to see what's popular.
Okay, that's the next video. And that's even
all right,
more
we'll get to that in a second,
yeah.
Okay? Come on. All right, and he says here, we're not trying to get into a wider war. We happen to bomb Yemen, we happen to bomb Iraq, and Israel happen to bomb many other countries. But golly gee, we're not the one trying to start a war. No, you are. That's exactly what you're doing. You're putting our soldiers in harm's way. You're getting them killed. That's a fact. If they weren't there for no reason at all, you weren't bombing all those people for pretty much no reason at all, they wouldn't have gotten killed. So it's totally on you and Joe Biden. Every part of this is absurd, but hey, I'm not trying to get in a war with Iran. But Iran's fault. Oh, they're terrible. They won't even let us occupy 5 million people and hold them prisoners. Oh, come on. Boo, get out of here. And when none of them are asking about the donors, this is all theater. This is all theater. So you don't think, they don't think, none of the reporters in that room think the defense contractors, the oil companies, and AIPAC are relevant at all to this discussion. So it's obvious that Biden's not listening to the American people. Over 2/3 want a ceasefire. So who is he listening to? Why doesn't anybody ask that question? You can't ask that question, that's so wrong. That's actually 100% true. That would be a problem.
All right, let's go to the next video.
This is an election year. Is the president looking at his polling when he's weighing all of these options? Is the president looking at what?
My goodness. That's a heck of a question. He's not looking, ma'am. Let me just stop you right there.
Let me finish my question.
Commander-in-Chief is not looking at polling or considering the electoral calendar when he's defending.
How they feel about the war on Gaza?
Oh, now can I answer the question? He's not looking at political calculations or the polling or the electoral calendar as he works to protect our troops ashore and our ships at sea. And any suggestion to the contrary is offensive.
Is he looking at the polling with respect?
Ma'am.
Does the American public want a broader Middle East conflict when he weighs his political decision-making?
Ma'am, I've answered that question.
Okay, let's go. You didn't answer that question. Is he weighing that?
He is not concerning himself with the political calendar.
The American public have the opportunity to weigh in on whether they want made in America stamped on the bombs that are going to be dropped.
We're going to move on. Go ahead, Phil.
Thanks, Green.
So I think he's actually, for the most part, telling the truth there, because when you look at how much support Biden is losing, certainly in swing states like Michigan, over his handling on this war on Gaza, you would have to believe that he's not paying attention to the polling.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but no. So I'll give you a great example. You remember the day that it was leaked that Joe Biden told people in a closed door fundraiser that Israel was doing too many indiscriminate killing of civilians? That was the same day that a poll came out said that Biden is losing Michigan by 10 points. No, he doesn't look at the polling. He wouldn't care at all.
Okay.
Well, they just happened to leak it on the same day that he realized he's losing Michigan. But does he looks at the polling, of course, like any discussion of a politician not looking at polling, I refuse to engage. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. They are all 100% obsessed with polling. So he looks at it and then ignores it because he goes, yeah, but my donors don't want that. My donors want war, so I'm gonna give them war. Okay, because the donors are always 10 million times more important than the voters. And that's how Joe Biden thinks. He doesn't even, and then he tries to appease you by, oh, I have said strongly worded comments to Netanyahu.
Okay, but what good are your trash donors if your trash donors are going to pressure you to do things that won't get you reelected? What good are your donors? The whole point of donors is to get that cold hard cash to run your piece of crap campaign.
Well, look, this is basically chapter 4 of my book, Justice is Coming. They lost track of the actual goal, which is to win. Even if you only care, even if
Good, he doesn't deserve to win.
Right, if you just care about power, I'm not even talking about passing bills, which they couldn't care less about, right? And helping the average American, raising wages, get better health care. Nobody cares in Washington, approximately 0%. Now, to be fair, Bernie cares a little, Ro Khanna cares a little. Okay, so, but almost no one cares about us, the American voters, at all, not 1%. But they lost track that they were supposed to at least win elections to retain their power. They're now, everyone in Washington has this disease where 99% of their brain is consumed by donors. They're like, how do I get the money, the money? And so right now, every Biden surrogate, when they went to New Hampshire, they're like, oh, Biden's leading and raising more money.
Congratulations, yeah,
That's
congratulations.
not the point. The point is you're supposed to raise the money to win the election, but you're not winning the election at all. You're losing terrible. You guys know that his favorability is underwater with young voters by 44 points. 44 points, a Democrat with young voters. But don't worry, the donors are so happy. They're like, Joe, you're such a great guy. And don't worry, we'll get mainstream media to all say you're a wonderful guy and that we should have more war and we should kill more Muslims because they had it coming. Come on, right? And boy, that'll rally the troops. So it's disgusting. Biden's disgusting, Trump's disgusting. And we're with this horrible, sick, unjust system, you're never gonna get to the right answer. All you're gonna get is more war.
All right, when we come back from the break, we'll talk about the warmongers within the United States Senate, the division among the Republican electorate on more war, and the strong words that Tucker Carlson has for the warmongers in the Senate. Lots to get to when we come back, don't miss it.
Read the polls. Read the polls, Jack.
right, back on TYT. Swords of Words writes in, Anna and Cenk, even with bad news, your voices soothe me with the fact that I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy, and don't let anyone make you think you're crazy. What you're seeing with your own two eyes is real. What you're hearing is real. It's just so ridiculous to hear Kirby say repeatedly that we are not at war with the Houthis. We are at war with the Houthis. We're bombing Yemen. Bombing another country is an act of war. If another country bombed the United States and then purported that, no, we're not at war with the United States, would you believe that? What a ridiculous thing to say.
Yeah. No, look, every piece of propaganda is so obvious once you break it down with a tiny bit of logic. So they say, oh, the Palestinians don't love us enough. That's why we have to keep occupying them. Were they supposed to love you? Oh, well, I'm gonna get to that in a second here, so I'll save that, okay? But they added, thanks for being a light. We appreciate you guys are our light. Imploded Brainy said, I'm so sick of this BS. We aren't the United States of Israel. They take our money and give their people health care, but we can't do it for the American people. Nope, I'm out. Yeah, that's another good reason not to send money to Israel. They have universal health care and paid family leave. We don't. Why don't they send us money? Because apparently we need it way more than they do.
No, we don't need their money, okay? But I'd like us to keep ours instead of assisting them in, persecuting and slaughtering the Palestinian people. I would prefer that.
Let's go to some critique. Mountain Chaos said, Cenk, your response was absurd. You talk about 75 years of occupation. Yes, it is horribly bad, but what about Muslims trying to kill Jews for 1,500 years? What about it? So, okay, let's break that down. Number one, Christians have killed Jews 10,000 times more than Muslims have. So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna start killing Christians? What are we gonna do? Are we gonna occupy all the Christians? I mean, you agree, Holocaust happened in Europe, it didn't happen in the Middle East. In fact, do you know that the Ottoman Empire sent their entire armada to Spain during the Grand Inquisition to save all of the Jews that lived there and brought them to the Ottoman Empire? Did you know they saved 400,000 Jews? But nobody knows that because Muslims bad, Muslims boo, need to be occupied. They're such savages. 75 years of occupation is not enough. Okay, yes, Jews were horribly mistreated throughout the history of the world. So how does that justify the occupation? Can you believe they hate us? Of course they hate you, you're occupying them. Which people who are occupied would love their occupiers?
How do Israelis feel about Palestinians? Do they love them?
Do they? Yeah, so if Israelis hate Palestinians, does that mean Israel should be occupied by Palestinians? What a lunatic theory, lunatic. Sorry, I don't mean that you are. I'm just saying that talking point is absurd. And if you don't believe it's absurd, maybe let's go occupy some people and see if they love it and they love us. Don't be ridiculous, I'm sorry. I'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and SMD 1000, who just became a Young Turks member by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. We appreciate you, Anna.
Well, we have a little more on the expanding war in the Middle East. Let's get to it.
Only way we will get that done. None of us want new wars. None of us want new wars.
Increasingly, conservative voters are rejecting more war and an expanding war in the Middle East, and that's what you just witnessed during one of Nikki Haley's campaign events. Now, what's interesting is that there is this growing divide among the neocon wing of the Republican Party and the more isolationist wing of the Republican Party. And what you just witnessed was a representative of the growing isolationist mood among Republican voters. In fact, Tucker Carlson recently weighed in on the neocons in the United States Senate following a drone strike that killed 3 of our service members in Jordan. And I want to give you the statements by 2 senators in particular following that drone strike, and then I'll tell you what Tucker Carlson had to say about it. So at first you have Lindsey Graham, who in response to that drone strike had tweeted, Secretary Lloyd Austin's efforts to deter aggression against our forces in the region has failed miserably. I've long since lost confidence in the Biden national security team to deter Iran. If they do not change their policies now, more American service members in the region will pay the price. And then he follows that up with, hit Iran now, hit them hard. So he is itching and has been itching with a hot war with Iran for some time now. I mean, Lindsey Graham is the biggest war hawk and loves, I mean, I don't think he's ever seen a war he didn't love. Then you have Republican Senator John Cornyn jumping in to simply say target Tehran, also calling for war with Iran. And Tucker Carlson had a very simple response to both of them, one that I particularly enjoyed. He just called them effing lunatics.
Might be the first time I've agreed with Tucker Carlson. Couldn't agree more. So look, Lindsey Graham is a senator from defense contractors. And so he gets funded by them. He's pushed for every single war. Anytime there's any kind of conflict, he encourages Republican and Democratic presidents to bomb, bomb, bomb. And then once we bomb and then they bomb back, he always feigns surprise and says, you see that? We can't even murder them in peace. These savages fight back a little bit. And then he asked for a much wider war. And so he's one of the morons who were in favor of the Iraq war. Total idiot, got it completely wrong. How many of our kids died in Iraq? It was because of Lindsey Graham.
It's real easy for Senator Lindsey Graham, an elderly man with no children, to call for war because he doesn't have to worry about his own kids being sent to the Middle East.
I'll say the same thing to Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton and Nikki Haley and all these warmongers on the right wing. And by the way, same for the warmongers on the left wing. Okay, there isn't much on the left wing, but among Democrats, the Joe Bidens of the world who vote for every war, Hillary Clinton, Iraq war, we love it. Go, go, go! You will kill people more than Republicans will. So all those people. So I will say to you the same thing that I say to people who want you to do suicide bombings. I've said this for about 20 years on the show. Somebody asks you to do a suicide bombing, you go, oh yeah, that's a super interesting idea. You first. You put on the suicide vest, let me see your ass blow up, and then maybe I'll come after you, okay? Lead by example. So Lindsey Graham, Nikki Haley, Tom Cotton, etc., John Cornyn, go ahead, I want you on the front lines. If you're not on the front lines, shut up. I'm not sending my kids to fight your war, okay? So you first. Oh, you cowards are never gonna go there, never.
Right.
And all you're gonna do is send other kids to die, and you think, well, it doesn't matter. They're not gonna be the donor kids. They're all rich. We're gonna send poor kids to die for us.
And they'll be the first to sign legislation blocking any refugees from coming into the country, refugees that were made refugees due to the United States expanding war in the Middle East and destabilizing the region further. So that's the other part of it, right? The second half of it, where you have people displaced as a result of us helping to destabilize that region. And then the United States politicians, including those calling for the expansion of that war, denying entry of those refugees into our country for any hope of a life outside of total misery in the Middle East, misery that we partly attributed or contributed to. Now, I want to go to what the reality of a war with Iran would look like, because it's real easy to just call for it. And I know that a lot of people still have that mindset of US exceptionalism. And we do spend a lot of money in our military. But if you're under the impression that going to war with Iran would be a cakewalk for the United States and our military, you would be mistaken. This is no joke. So let's go to Jordan Cohen. He's a policy analyst in defense and foreign policy at the Cato Institute. And he wrote a really great piece in The Hill about what a war with Iran would look like. And this is the kind of stuff that he analyzes to kind of see what the cost of the war would be, what the chances are that the United States would win. And here's what he writes. Iran's military is designed to prevent an invasion and impose significant costs on any potential attack by air or sea. They have 600-mile range cruise missiles, advanced long-range air defense systems, short-range air defense systems, anti-aircraft missiles, 3,000 ballistic missiles, 6,000 naval mines, and the most capable unmanned aerial vehicles in the region. So you can kind of understand why Israel would want us to fight their war for them rather than taking it on themselves. But let me continue. Previous analysts have weighed the chances of success for a campaign reliant on US air and naval power. A 2002 war game that required US planners to change the rules mid-conflict showed that Iran could easily sink US ships, and in 2012, Pentagon officials estimated that such a strategy would require a minimum of 100,000 troops. So simply attacking Iran by land, by air and sea wouldn't be enough. We would have to send some troops on the ground. But as a result, the US will be unable to engage in a strategy relying on air and naval power to overwhelm the Iranian military, and a ground invasion would be necessary. So let's get to the ground invasion and what that would require. Following escalations with Iran in 2019, Pentagon officials estimated a version of this strategy that sought to destroy Iranian nuclear weapons facilities that would require a minimum of 120,000 troops deployed throughout the Middle East. That's just throughout the Middle East. What about troops on the ground in Iran? We'll get a load of this. This is insane. Analysts estimate that any ground invasion would require 1.6 million US troops, almost 10 times what the United States committed to Iraq at any given time. So are we ready for this? Is this what we want? I don't want this. This is ridiculous. This is insane.
To quote a guy I do not like, effing lunatics. It's true. So now you see me hit Trump harder than anybody, probably in America. And on this, I 100% disagree with Trump too. He nearly started World War III. Just got lucky it didn't happen. He killed the top Iranian general. He moved our embassy in Israel. These are massive provocations. And he got us out of the Iran deal, which was taking all the uranium out of Iran. Now they can develop nukes because the moron named Donald Trump took us out of the deal. Now, having said that, I'm going to say something that's going to make a lot of people really mad. There are only parts of MAGA that I like and respect. You're not allowed to say it. We have to hate the other side 100%, and they have to hate us 100%. But that guy who ripped up that Nikki Haley sign, I like that guy. So I might not like his other views. I might not like that he supports Donald Trump, and he might be misinformed about how Trump's anti-war and all that. Okay, but I don't find it. I don't find figures like Nikki Haley comforting.
No.
They're all work for the establishment. The establishment is terrible, awful. I don't agree with the mainstream media who thinks that the establishment is wonderful. The status quo is amazing. And these beloved politicians. No, I think these politicians are monsters. And if there is a portion of MAGA, and I think there is, that genuinely is standing up and going, I don't want it, that's it. I don't want any more wars. I don't want to go die for you. I don't want to. So you keep telling me, no, I have to die for Israel. I have to die for oil companies. I have to die for defense contractors. I have to die for Halliburton. No, I don't want to. And it's got no business, we got no business there. It gives us no advantage, 0, 0, 0. It's to protect an ally, really? What ally? How has Israel helped us? They've helped us with absolutely nothing. All they ever did was get us in more trouble. So, and we have to do it to protect only democracy in the Middle East. How is it a democracy when it imprisons 5 million Palestinians and says we're never going to take our boot off their neck? But Netanyahu says it now, no Palestinian state. We're never going to give them a state. Gee, I wonder why the Muslims hate us. But no, you have to go and die there because Lindsey Graham wanted a war, Nikki Haley wanted a war. So no, I'm not interested in any of that. They're terrible human beings. Don't let the mainstream media lie to you. The real problem is the people in power, not the powerless.
100%. When we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit about how Nancy Pelosi is under the impression that pro-Palestinian protesters are actually funded by Russia and China.
Yeah, lunatic.
One of the most insane stories involving Nancy Pelosi, and that's saying a lot because there are a lot of insane stories involving Pelosi. We'll also talk a little bit about a UN agency that is now losing funding after Israel claimed that 12 of its members aided and abetted Hamas's atrocities on October 7th. We'll discuss what the allegations are and whether it makes sense to just entirely pull funding from this group of people that provide humanitarian aid to Palestinians. It employs 13,000 individuals. So we'll get to that and more. Don't miss it.
The Russia.
Back on TYT, Michael Cotavelli on a YouTube super chat says, Cenk, your convo with Ben on Friday. I agree about Hamas stealing aid trucks with you, though we forget that the hostages need food and water to survive as well. I don't know what the solution is, but I've never seen it brought up. Yeah, because all people have is talking points. Hamas stole some of the items off an aid truck, so we shouldn't give any aid to the Palestinians. No, those two things are not connected. Yeah, it's terrible that Hamas steals from them. But as I gave the example of El Salvador, if MS-13 stole some aid that went into El Salvador, does that mean we should never help the people of El Salvador? That's a crazy thing to say. There's 500,000 starving Palestinians right now. And so we're not supposed to help them because someone else, a bad guy, stole 2 loaves of bread, whatever the hell they stole. It's absurd. And we're gonna get to the UN organization in a second, but that's just propaganda to attack them. So it's not just propaganda because there's some truth to it, but we'll break it down for you guys. But anything that helps Palestinians, Israel is working, and now America is working super actively to shut it down. They want them so desperate that they have no choice but to go into Egypt. Hassan Ali writes in, thank you, you're the best. I could stay and listen to you all day because you are real. I won't watch CNN or any other news for 1 minute. Thank you for saying that, Hassan, I appreciate you. He's a YouTube member, and so these folks, Boris writes in, I say these young Turks are speaking uncomfortable truths. Yes, we are. Ed Noonmaker or Nunmaker says attacking Iran because they supplied the weapons is exactly the same thing if Russia attacked us for supplying Ukraine. Uncomfortable questions.
It's okay when the US does it.
Yeah, when Russia does it, we should kill them all. When we do it, it's awesome. Anwar Karimi says, hi all, love from Amsterdam. I love that people are watching from all over because Mr. Scary said afternoon from Des Moines all. So anyway, from Des Moines to Amsterdam, I love it. Schrodinger's Dragon says, I truly wish that I could talk rationally to my family about politics that have an impact on us all. They're Trump stuck and closed-minded about hearing other opinions. I keep trying. Well, also true for a lot of Democrats. So let's all keep trying to break through. Now, I'm gonna go to someone else who doesn't agree in our member section on TYT.com. Just Jim wrote in, Cenk, that response is not very logical. I was anti-war before either of you were thought of. Is your answer just leave the Middle East and let the cards fall where they may? It sounds like America first.
No, the answer is as things get even more dicey in the Middle East as a result of what Israel is doing in Gaza, the United States, which has a lot of say and can very easily pressure Israel by threatening to pull its support both financially and militarily, could again pressure Israel to do targeted strikes against Hamas. Like, I'm not against Israel going after Hamas, and they do have a right to defend themselves, but they have been engaging in collective punishment, which has led to other countries, including these militant groups, getting super fired up and retaliating. That is what's expanding the war. But rather than pressure Israel, the United States has made a decision to instead engage militarily with these militant groups, which is expanding the war. That's the answer. Let's get back to the show.
On TYT, Cenk and Anna and Ingram. Ingram, thank you for gifting 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. You're awesome. Anna.
Let's get to Nancy Pelosi, nasty Nancy. Let's do it.
But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see.
What you just heard was complete and utter insanity. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked about pro-Palestinian protesters in the United States, many of whom are young Americans who are fired up over the images and the videos that they're seeing coming out of Gaza, innocent women and children being slaughtered in the Gaza Strip. That's what's firing them up. But if you listen to Nancy Pelosi, you would believe that no, actually what's behind these pro-Palestinian protesters is Russia? Let's listen.
How concerned are you that people, young people, Arab Americans, progressives, I'm not suggesting that they're going to go vote for Donald Trump, but how concerned are you that they might just stay home?
For them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now, as you know.
You think some of these protests are Russian plants?
I don't think they're plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
Did you guys hear what she just said? She wants the FBI to investigate pro-Palestinian protesters to see if they are funded by Russia. But in previous instances, she decided, you know what, let me pick a different US adversary to blame this all on. So pay close attention to what she says in this next video.
I say it's all spontaneous and sincere. Young people care about the right to choose. They care about LGBTQ issues. They care about preserving the planet. They care about gun violence prevention. That's what they tell us. They care about our democracy and the freedoms that are contained in some of what I said. So they're going to have to make a decision, staying home to enable or to agonize, organize, not agonize, but organize and get out there and get the job. I have every confidence that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be president and vice president of the United States.
So there she is trying to persuade young voters who are disgusted by Biden's endless and unwavering support of what Israel's doing in Gaza. Like she's trying to convince them, well, they're gonna vote for us anyway, even if they're disgusted by what's happening in Gaza because we're allegedly great on all these other issues. Whatever. But let's go to the next video because this is where you're going to hear her talk about another country influencing these pro-Palestinian protesters.
Most of your constituents want stop the genocide, stop the Holocaust.
The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire.
She's yelling about China.
Telling them to what, go back to China?
Go back to China.
Yeah. So first of all, Nancy, you got to make up your mind. Are they Russian or are they Chinese?
It's pathetic.
Okay, so talked to a Democratic friend today, and I was talking to him about how bubbles. Okay, MAGA's in a massive bubble, but aren't Democrats in a bubble? And I mentioned this as an example. He said, well, if Pelosi said it, she must have done some research. So
Right.
Come on. Okay, all right, anyways, look guys, when she first started talking about that Putin is financing the ceasefire effort, I thought she was talking about Ukraine. She's talking about Israel.
Yeah.
What? What? So this is the kind of drivel, nonsense lunacy that comes from Democratic establishment that's almost never challenged. I mean, she's the most beloved figure in Washington. Everyone in media loves her. Everyone in the Democratic Party loves her. They all claim she's a master legislator and a genius. Does she look like a genius to you? I'm going to say things that are unacceptable. She looks like an addled old fool to me. Go back to China, you whippersnappers. Okay.
Yeah, great job speaking to American citizens and voters that way, just dismissing them as By the way, go back to China. What kind of line is that? It's disgusting. She's disgusting, okay? The Democratic Party has become such an embarrassment. And it is amazing that, I guess that's their one-trick pony move, right?
Of course.
Let's just blame Russia.
Yeah, so look, I think that there was good evidence that worth an investigation to see, because Donald Trump Jr. did have a meeting with the Russians during the campaign, et cetera. And we can get back into all that. But now looking back at it, it turns out both sides were right. I think that there was a good reason to look at it, given all the things that the Trump kids said, Trump said himself about his loyalty to Russia, et cetera, right? But apparently it's also true that the Democrats just have that as their fail-safe excuse for everything. Hillary Clinton lost, Russia. Young people don't want to murder Palestinians, Russia, okay, or China. But everything's Russia. I mean, like it's
pathetic.
No, MAGA's not wrong about that. Every time they're in a bind, they always go, Russia, Russia. You didn't like your sandwich, Russia. Okay, it's like that thanks Obama meme, right? But it just, in this case, Russia. Okay, guys, I want to disprove her just in case you're a Democrat and you think, no, if she said it, it must be true. So Biden went from being popular with young voters. Remember, he tried to lift student debt. He did a number of things. So he was above water. He had higher favorability than unfavorability. Now, do you know what his numbers are with young voters? That's 18 to 29-year-olds. He's 44 points below water.
Must be Russia.
44 points. So Russia paid almost every 18 to 29-year-old in this country for him to lose 50 to 60 points in that demographic. 50 to 60 points. But Russia, it must have been Russia.
Maybe Russia threatened the pollsters.
Yeah.
To skew the poll results against Biden. Think about it. It can't be that Biden's unpopular with young people. It can't be. It can't be.
And it's not just, hey, listen, our Democratic leadership is like just totally incompetent. Their brains have melted. All they do is serve donors, and they're corrupt and addled and all that. It's not just that, guys. It's serious. She's saying the FBI should investigate all pro-Palestinian protesters. Everyone who says, hey, why did we just murder 20 times the number of people Hamas killed? Why did we do that? We said Hamas was the world's worst terrorists because they murdered those poor people in Israel. Then we murdered 20 times the number. But if you dare to complain about that, Nancy Pelosi wants to have the FBI investigate you because you might be a Chinese agent or a Russian agent. Okay, look, if it hurts your feelings, it's not on me, it's on you. We need new leadership. These people are ridiculous, and they're not anywhere near left-wing, progressive, what FDR Democrat. No, these are right-wing thugs posing as Democratic Party officials. They've been totally co-opted by donors, and they're not on our side at all. If you're a Democratic voter, Nancy Pelosi doesn't care about your interests. She's gonna go to war whether you like it or not, and none of you want it, but she's gonna give it to you anyway, and if you complain, she might have the FBI investigate you.
She'll smear you as an enemy of the state, someone in bed with Russia or China, if you're protesting and saying things that she doesn't like. And that's a lot of people in America, by the way. Let's go to a Reuters Ipsos poll that was done in November. Many polls like this have similar results, but let's go to this one, which shows that some 68% of respondents in this Reuters Ipsos poll said that they agreed with a statement that Israel should call a ceasefire and try to negotiate, meaning they should try to solve this through diplomatic means.
Russians.
I guess they're all Russians.
68% of the country are Russians. Well, I didn't know.
At least funded by Russia.
Yeah.
About 3/4 of Democrats and half of Republicans in the poll supported the idea of a ceasefire, putting them at odds with Democratic President Joe Biden, who has rebuffed calls from Arab leaders, including Palestinians, to pressure Israel into a ceasefire.
Against 3/4 of your own voters. So mainstream media, who serves Democratic voters better? Us or Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden? It's not even close. Democratic voters agree with us overwhelmingly. But you go kiss her ass and pretend she represents Democrats when she does the exact opposite.
I also want to note that over the weekend, Arab American leaders in critical swing state Michigan refused to meet with a Biden campaign official because, as you all know, we've shared this story multiple times. There is a significant voting bloc of Arab Americans in the state of Michigan, and that's a swing state that Biden desperately needs in order to win re-election. They have seen his handling of the war on Gaza And obviously they're disgusted by it. So many are saying that, you know what, we're obviously not gonna vote for Trump, but we're gonna sit it out. We're not gonna vote for Biden either. And so in an effort to improve relations with that Arab American voting bloc, there was a Biden campaign manager, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, who planned to meet with Arab American leaders in Michigan, and they refused to meet with her, which is stunning. This is actually very rare to see because we're talking about someone close to the president of the United States. You have Arab American leaders saying, no, we're not interested in talking to you. Assad Turfe, deputy Wayne County executive, said that he had been asked to organize a meeting with elected officials, but he said the leaders were too angry about the Biden administration's policy to meet. I made the ultimate decision to cancel the meeting in the best interest of the community. There were some who were willing to meet with her. Dearborn Mayor Abdullah Hammoud said on X, formerly known as Twitter, that residents want an immediate ceasefire. One Arab American leader did agree to meet with Rodriguez. His name is Osama Siblani, publisher of Arab American News. And he said that he was willing to meet with her in order to discuss the reluctance of others to meet with her and what the community is really feeling in regard to the US support for what Israel's doing in Gaza. I told her that my community does not want me to meet with you, but I want to meet with you, look you in the eyes. I said, look, we feel like we've been betrayed by the president, that we voted for him in 2020. We're not going to do it again.
Okay, so
they must be Russians.
Yeah. Look, guys, I was just in Dearborn about a week ago. So she's in Dearborn trying to get them to meet with her. And I talked to dozens, if not hundreds, of Muslim and Arab Americans there and throughout the country. And the Democratic Party is in a total state of denial. They're not getting it at all. Those folks are not going to vote for Joe Biden. They're not going to vote for him under penalty of law. The Democrats think, it's okay. We got Trump on the other side. They'll come back. They'll come back. No, I talked to them for hours and hours. They're not coming back. So again, a lot of them are not going to vote for Trump. Some though are going, well, he doesn't like Netanyahu and he's unpredictable. Unpredictable is better than genocide. And so, but I'll guarantee you this, the great majority of Muslims and Arabs in Michigan are not gonna vote for Joe Biden. They despise him. And they used to love him. And you know why they switched? Russia. No, it's because he said, you wanna murder 26,000 Palestinians? Oh, great, go for it, green light, green light, green light. You think they don't have eyes? They have family, a lot of them do, in Gaza. Their family members get killed and you tell them, oh no, you had to do it and you shouldn't say one thing against Israel. You shouldn't take one action against Israel to try to stop them. No, you're not gonna convince them, they're gone. They're not voting for Biden. So kiss Michigan goodbye, good luck to you. Or it's okay if you're a Democrat, live in delusion, just like MAGA did until November. And then maybe we'll rush the Capitol on January 6th this time around.
Not interested.
And because we'll be shocked. Biden couldn't have lost. Every lib I know was positive he was gonna win, that it didn't matter how big a deficit he had with Arab Americans, Latinos, young Americans, women, educated, it doesn't matter. He was gonna win. No, he's not. Okay, go ahead, live in delusion if you like. Be the new MAGA if you like. But anyways, Michigan's gone. They don't even wanna meet with Biden. They have no interest in him. Good luck.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour, we've got one more story related to the war in Gaza. We're going to talk about a UN agency that is now being defunded over allegations made by Israel. And then later on in the show, I wanted to give you an update on GOP efforts to obstruct passage of any legislation that would help alleviate what we're experiencing in the nation's southern border. Come right back.
The Russia.
Now I'm gonna do something very different here and read some one-star reviews of the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Donnie Franchise said, pretty much it's like listening to a trash compactor. Someone else said, negative, anti-American propaganda. And others said, out of context, misquotes, typical leftists who are afraid to debate, just smear. These two would be perfect for CNN or MSLSD. Well, Donnie, you might have a point, because I feel like a trash compactor right now after taking in all those garbage reviews. But thanks for listening anyway. We are, in fact, unapologetically progressive. And if you're not ready for bold commentary, then we're not the show for you. On the Young Turks, we speak up about the issues that matter, and we want to make positive change happen. And now here's why we actually do the show. Mariel Morales said, found this podcast from the True Crime Podcast, Fruit Loops, and other great progressive podcasts. I've become an instant fan of the Young Turks. Great conversation, great takes, very well composed, factual podcast, very informative. Love to hear that. Zed55 said, it's a joy to experience such awareness and intelligence from fascinating people. And Anna is gorgeous and brilliant. Apparently I'm just fascinating, but I'll take it. Paul for Progress said, news well delivered. Appreciate it. KOOK said, Democrats and Republicans are fair game for TYT. And if Anna or Cenk provide disinformation about anything, they will admit they made a mistake and correct it. We appreciate you noticing that we are honest. To people who actually listen to the substance of the show, thank you. Your listenership supports what we do. Leave a 5-star rating for the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Let's take the ratings back from the trolls. Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique, exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members-only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got 12 progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together. Times are tough in America. The cost of living is through the roof. But mainstream media doesn't talk about the stories that actually matter to your everyday life. At TYT, we cover the stories that corporate media wouldn't dare to talk about. But we need your support to do it. You can't put a price on fighting for positive change. So become a TYT member at a price that's right for you. So that way you get to pick the price. When you go to tyt.com/join, scroll down to the name your price option, and you can become a member at a price point that makes sense for you.
Hot dog is my favorite meat. Obrador.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and guys, I hope you're ready for this. AI has joined TYT, and in fact, it's AI, the human destroyer. Whoa, now we're pretty powerful. But they hit the join button below. You can do likewise. And Benjamin Moore gifted a membership. We appreciate you guys. By the way, if you give a contribution over $50 at tyt.com/join or become an annual member, we're giving away gifts. That's interesting. So do it at tyt.com/join. Anna.
All right, well, we've got some more updates out of Gaza. This one is even more disastrous for the Palestinians who have been suffering for the last 3 months. Several countries, including the United States, Britain, Germany, Australia, and more, have decided to temporarily pause or suspend funding for the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. So 12 out of the 13,000 members of this agency, also known as UNRWA, have been accused by Israel of being involved in the October 7th Hamas atrocities. Israel's allegations are pending an investigation, but until then, 2 million people who depend on this organization for humanitarian relief are in a very dire situation. So let's talk about the timeline of events. I should start this off by noting that first you have the International Court of Justice coming out with their preliminary ruling indicating that it is in fact feasible that Israel is carrying out a genocide in the Gaza Strip. And then they proceeded to provide Israel actionable things to do and to basically prevent a genocide from happening. And that includes allowing for humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip. A day after that, Israel comes out with these allegations against two members of UNRWA. UNRWA Commissioner General Felipe Lazzarini said Israel provided the agency with information about the alleged involvement of several UNRWA employees in Hamas's October 7th attack without specifying further. He said UNRWA launched an independent investigation. Immediately, the UN fired 9 people, even before any investigation took place. Israel makes the allegations, the UN takes it super seriously, fires 9 people. Some of the alleged individuals have died since the October 7th attacks. But really what's important to focus on here is that since 12 out of 13,000 people working for this agency were accused of working with Hamas, now you have all of these different countries suspending financial support to the organization, which is the largest organization providing humanitarian relief to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The timing is especially convenient for Israel, which I'm sure enjoyed being able to distract from the International Criminal Court of Justice and their ruling, their preliminary ruling, to instead focus on what UNRWA's been up to. Now, Israeli spokesperson Mark Regev told the BBC that an Israeli hostage who was released said that she was held in a house of someone who worked for UNRWA, and the claim has not been independently verified yet. So far, none of this has been verified. It's just accusations by Israel, and we need to go through an investigation. UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez said 12 UNRWA employees were implicated in the alleged misconduct. Of those, 9 were immediately identified and terminated. 1 is confirmed dead, and the identity of 2 others is being clarified. And so the consequences include at least 9 countries suspending funding to UNRWA, which includes the United States, Canada, Australia, Germany, the UK, Italy, the Netherlands, and Finland. The EU has refused to suspend funding, understanding the importance of the organization as a whole. And Scotland also refused to suspend funding to UNRWA. And I give them a lot of credit for doing that, because the idea of suspending funding because 12 people out of 13,000 people were allegedly implicated in Hamas's atrocities would be ridiculous.
Okay, so first of all, this is actually super easy if you lived in the real world where logic matters, etc. But if you live in the propaganda world that we actually live in, then it becomes a giant issue. So why is it easy? Well, find out if anyone actually worked with Hamas to help do the attacks of October 7th, and then fire them, prosecute them, arrest them.
100%.
And then, but don't do anything to the people who didn't work with Hamas. Wow, that's so hard. So wait, we're supposed to shut down an entire aid organization because a couple people did something bad in it. Well, what if 9 people in Israel helped Hamas on October 7th? It's not impossible, right? So should we end aid to Israel? I'm just trying to follow the logic here. Hold on. Let me tell you why they're doing this. Anyone that is helping the Palestinians is a target. So you dig until you find dirt. And then you don't say, hey, we found dirt on Bob and Susie. You say, I found dirt on the organization. Shut it down, shut it down. And a lot of the Western governments, they want to do whatever Israel tells them, and they're just looking for an excuse so they can tell their voters who don't agree with Israel, who actually don't want to murder Palestinians, so they can tell their voters, oh, we had to shut it down. We stopped all aid to that organization because everyone inside that organization is guilty. That's absurd. So why? Why are they stopping UNRWA? Why did they target UNRWA? One, because the UN is doing an investigation of Israel, so they're striking back against the UN. But much more importantly, they're the ones that are helping starving Palestinians. Now, if you cut off the one place where Palestinians are getting help, they're going to be more desperate. Now, remember, cabinet ministers in the Israeli government have said, we want to drive them into Egypt.
Right.
And so if they're so desperate and they're starving, and you go, here's a little food in Egypt, and you go, well, there was nothing we could do. I mean, they went voluntarily because the only place where they could get food or medical attention was right in the south, where we stuffed them and then bombed them and starved them. Oh, look at that, they crossed the border, that's it, now we own Gaza. And Jewish settlers, run in, lunatic settlers, just grab all of Gaza.
That's exactly right. And in fact, there was a conference by settlers for settlers in Israel over the weekend where you have high-ranking Israeli officials attending and giving keynote speeches. We're gonna get to that in a moment because I think it's important to talk about that and its relation to this entire UNRWA story. But before we do, I just want to also give you some historical context in regard to the Israeli government's treatment of UNRWA and how they've wanted to delegitimize that UN agency for a very long time. Now, number one, that agency was established after the Nakba. So Nakba happens in 1948, and then in 1949, UNRWA is created in order to provide support and humanitarian aid to Palestinian refugees who were driven out of their homes, driven out of their land, and pushed into the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, okay? Now, when that happened, Israel was really irritated with the fact that UNRWA not only considered those who were pushed out of their land and homes as refugees, but that their descendants, that their children were also considered refugees. Now, why are they considered refugees? Well, because they're living in the Gaza Strip, they don't have their own state, they don't have the right to self-determination, none of that. They have no rights, and their lives are completely controlled by the Israeli government. And so since they're living in horrible conditions in Gaza, UNRWA continued offering, humanitarian aid to those refugees and the descendants of those refugees. Israel can't stand that and has always wanted to delegitimize that organization. So congratulations, they make the allegations against 12 people. Without an investigation, 9 of them immediately get fired, okay? And by the way, Israel could be totally right about that. I think that there should be an investigation, and if they're found to have aided and abetted Hamas, they absolutely should be prosecuted and they should be brought to justice 1000%. And if it is true that they carried out those atrocities or aided and abetted those atrocities, I'm disgusted by the fact that they have jeopardized the funding of this critical organization in order to do what they did. So I've got no love for them if they are found guilty of what they have been accused of by Israel. But with that in mind, think about what this means, Cenk. Israel doesn't want to offer humanitarian aid. They don't want to be the ones carrying out the humanitarian aid in Gaza. They've made that clear. And they have now succeeded in pulling funding, critical funding, away from the one massive humanitarian aid group that was giving humanitarian aid to Palestinians. So what's the future of Palestinians going to look like now?
So one of our members suggested that, hey, why doesn't the IDF give the aid to the Palestinians instead of worrying about Hamas, for example, taking some of the aid, right? No, to be fair to the IDF, that's you can't have them do that because they'd be sitting ducks, and so they could get killed while trying to give the aid. So I'm fair, don't do that. That'll just get the IDF kids. And some of you could say they're terrible, whatever you can want, but remember they got drafted, right? And some of them might enthusiastically want to be there. Some might hate being there, right? But I don't want them getting killed. So that's not the right way to go. But then Israel says, okay, but Hamas stole 2 loaves of bread, so that we shouldn't send aid because Hamas might take some. Okay, so we're not going to deliver it. Hamas might take some, so you shouldn't give any. And now some people at the UN did bad things, so the UN shouldn't give any. Look at that. It looks like there's no way to help the Palestinians ever if you listen to Israeli logic. And that anyone who does is, of course, terrorist, it's anti-Semitic, et cetera, et cetera. Now, so let me ask you this question. So we just told you very clearly we're against the guys if it turns out they ate it, and 9 of them already fired, so very likely. Okay, so if they helped on October 7th, they should definitely fight. And on top of that, we're adding they should be arrested. So now the Israeli government has killed 20 times the number of civilians as Hamas does. Where do I go to get the people who helped them fired? Because I mean, I'm told that if you help terrorists kill civilians, that should get you fired, and that makes sense. I agree. So, but the terrorist Benjamin Netanyahu has killed 20 times the civilians that the terrorist Hamas did. And I am being perfectly consistent. If you're disagreeing with me, then you're just flat out wrong. You're saying, oh, I want to call the other side bad guys, but when we do the same exact thing, I don't want you to call me bad guys. I want them fired, but not me fired. Okay, well, you're inconsistent, you're unprincipled, and you don't actually care about the issue. You're just being blinded by your prejudice.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, it's amazing that like genocidal statements by literal politicians within the Israeli government is totally fine, right? The genocidal statements, that's okay. The conference that members of Israel's government attended over the weekend, totally fine. What am I referring to? Well, over the weekend, right-wing Israeli ministers joined thousands at an event calling for the resettlement of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. I mean, they've already stolen a ton of land. Let's steal more of it. And so Bezalel Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, both keynote speakers at the event.
Of course.
The conference dubbed "Settlement Brings Security."
Oh, does it? Does Israel look more secure, guys?
Was led in part by the right-wing Nakala organization, a group advocating for the expansion of Jewish settlements, which are considered illegal by international and humanitarian bodies. But I mean, what good does that do? They've completely delegitimized themselves, to be quite honest. The event called for Israel to rebuild settlements in both Gaza and northern parts of the occupied West Bank. Taking stage at the conference, Ben-Gvir called on Netanyahu to be courageous, saying now was the time to develop Israeli settlements in Gaza and to encourage Palestinians to leave the enclave. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said that the country is at a crossroads and that without settlement, there is no security. So I mean, now this is repeated, right? This isn't the first time we've heard far-right politicians in Israel's far-right government saying these kinds of things. So can the United States pull funding to Israel since they have people saying genocidal things or things in favor of ethnic cleansing within the government? No, of course we're not going to do that. That doesn't delegitimize the government of Israel, does it?
Yeah, Ben-Gvir is a literal terrorist. He was convicted.
Literal.
He was convicted of aiding terrorists. He has pictures of Israeli terrorists on his giant pictures of them, posters of them in his living room that he brags about. Hey, this terrorist killed 29 innocent Palestinians. I love this guy. That's why there's a giant picture in my living room. Every time I go and I look at that terrorist and love him so much. The most effective terrorist in the history of the world is Yigal Amir, who assassinated Yitzhak Rabin, part of these lunatic right-wing settler movement in Israel. So let me ask you something. If you love Israel, and you want Israel to be a flourishing, peaceful democracy and a safe haven for Jews, which I do you think the settlements have brought Israel peace and security? Legitimate question. Or do you think that maybe, hey, occupying these people for 75 years seems to have agitated them? That we thought they were going to be our good servants and know their role, and that they were just going to know that they should just be occupied forever, and they hate us. I can't believe they don't like us when we've been occupying them for 75 years. And we took half their country first, now we're taking a lot of the West Bank, and now we're thinking of taking all of Gaza. I don't know why they don't love us. I don't know why we don't have peace and security. I'm sorry, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out why you don't have peace and security. And the occupation, and the settlements, and you'll very, very likely have peace and security. I know what you think. No way, those Palestinians are monsters. They're all savages. They'll never want peace. You know that you sound like a savage when you say that? Okay, anyways, so you had a peace deal with Egypt, it worked. These are facts, these are obvious, overwhelming facts. Peace deal with Egypt that Israel did. It turns out the Egyptians were not savages. They honored the peace deal for decade after decade after decade. And you didn't have another war with Egypt, why? Because you made a peace deal. Oh, look at that. Peace brings you peace and security. War brings you endless war. Settlements and occupation bring you endless war. Israel will never be safe and secure if they don't end the occupation. That is the most obvious thing in the whole wide world to everyone outside of Israel and Washington, D.C. The rest of the world is looking like, are you guys schmucks? Are you the dumbest people in the world?
Yes.
You think that the occupation keeps you safer? That's the number one reason you're not safe. What did you think, that they were all gonna bow their heads and go, of course, Israel will be we will be the servants. They can do anything they want. We love them, we're so sorry, we'll never fight back. You thought they were gonna do that. How stupid do you have to be to believe that? No, they're gonna fight you to the end of time because you're occupying them. If that breaks your heart, take it up with Israeli leaders, because they're gonna drive you into endless war. Israel's never going to be safe with monsters like Ben Gvir, Schmortich, or whatever the hell his name is, and Netanyahu. All terrorists, all 20 times worse than Hamas.
And we fund them. All right, we got to take a break. Republican infighting on immigration when we come back.
Hey, Kevin, you got any guts?
All right, guys, like I said a little while ago, if you contribute more than $50, which you can at tyt.com/join, or you get an annual subscription, we're giving away gifts for folks who are doing that right now. So check it out at tyt.com/join. We appreciate you guys. All right, let's go to our members. Hedgehog Dragon says, I want to thank everyone who checked out hour 2. I want to ask everyone who checked out for hour 2 on Friday to go and watch the VOD for it. Or if you're a member, you just watch hour 2 anytime you want on the site. I know why you did, and I was planning on bouncing too, but I gave them a chance, and both Cenk and Ben were very cordial and didn't yell at all when they got to Israel and Gaza story. Yeah, it's got a lot of emotions, but we tried our best, present both sides, and then give you a fair assessment. And that day, we were kept it under control. So check it out if you can. Starshine Dragon Song said, you are so right, Anna. They have never cared about our soldiers, referring to the people in DC. Joe said, maybe I'm naive, but I always kind of assume that these bases, the one that got attacked in Jordan, ours, has some kind of air defense situation. How did this even happen? They do have air defense, because we're so arrogant. We think, oh, these dumb Iranians, dumb Muslims, they're never gonna figure it out. No, they figured out something super simple. We have drones. When our drones are coming back, they sent the drones along with the American drone so that we would think that it was ours, and then they bombed.
Yep.
Now, how are you gonna solve for that? We send out drones all the time to kill them. So when the drones come back, they come back with extra drones, so you can't tell. Oops. Yeah, they figured it out. You know why? Because they're human. They're just as smart as us. No, you can't say Muslims and Persians and Iranians, they're as smart as us. No, yeah, they are. They just don't have as much money. Okay, Opinionated says, wait, Cenk, didn't you know that all rich kids have bone spurs? Oh yeah, good point. Trump's Lady Lumps says, speaking as someone who was at the protests in Seattle, I guarantee you, Pelosi, none of us gives a damn about Putin. We do give a damn about slimy politicians like yourself, what are not only helping genocide, but now gaslighting Americans as if it's the 1950s McCarthyism. I'd say shame on you, but you have no shame, no morals, and no hope to fool us young people ever again. Here. Starshine Dragon Song says, Anna, you are nailing it and saving me a lot of typing. It's just another way to cut the food to the people in Gaza. This is collective punishment of 2.2 million people for the actions of maybe 12 who may have betrayed the principles of the organization for which they worked. Yes, that's the point.
Any organization with tens of thousands of people are gonna have some bad apples in it. The idea of punishing everyone within the organization as a result is ridiculous, period.
Yep, we'll be back. Back on Young Turks, Cenk, Anna, and John Weber. Thank you, John. Anna.
Well, Republicans are engaging in a little bit of infighting when it comes to the southern border. So let's talk about the main players and what they're beefing about.
It is interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year.
Damn. That was Republican Senator James Lankford calling out his Republican colleagues for serving as obstructionists to much needed border security legislation. The same border security legislation that they claim to have wanted, but are holding out on in order to give Donald Trump something to campaign on for the 2024 presidential election. Now, Lankford has even gone so far as to say that his Republican colleagues are sabotaging these bipartisan efforts at passing immigration legislation to help Trump and his chances at winning the presidential election. Trump, who is running for re-election and who decisively won the GOP's first 2 nominating contests this month, blasted the would-be bipartisan deal as a potential political gift to Democrats during an election year. On Saturday, Trump bragged about inserting himself into the debate and stymieing efforts to get the bill passed, even though he is not in office. So let me be clear, you have Biden, along with Democrats in the Senate, ready and willing to play ball with the most extreme elements of the Republican Party in terms of passing legislation on border security. And now you have Republicans saying, no, never mind, we're not interested, because their daddy Trump told them, don't give Democrats this win. I need something to campaign on. So here's what the current bipartisan legislation in the Senate would include, according to Lankford.
This bill focuses on getting us to 0 illegal crossings a day. There's no amnesty. It increases the number of Border Patrol agents. It increases asylum officers. It increases detention beds so we can quickly detain and then deport individuals. It ends catch and release. It focuses on additional deportation flights out. It changes our asylum process so that people get a fast asylum screening at a higher standard and then get returned back to their home country.
I mean, it is a goodie bag to Republicans in regard to what they've been asking for with border security and immigration. In fact, Biden on Friday said that the bill would grant him new emergency authority to shut down the border, referring to a provision that would kick in when unauthorized crossings surpass 5,000 over a 5-day average. He vowed to use that new authority on the day he signed the bill into law, the bill that is ill-fated considering the political maneuvering of Republicans who are trying to get Trump elected. The authority Biden was referencing would shut down most asylum screenings for migrants crossing illegally. Migrants could still apply at ports of entry where a set number of asylum claims would need to be granted, they said. Migrants would be expelled indefinitely until crossings dipped below 3,750 per day, which would end the expulsion authority period. Cenk, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so Langford's now, for the first time in his life, experiencing what it feels like to be a Democrat. He's like confounded. I've seen him in a couple of interviews. He's like, I don't get it. These things that the right-wing media is saying is not true at all. Yeah, it's never true. Like you just discovered that? And he's like, this thing on the 3,750, 5,000 people, et cetera. No, there's been 5,000 people crossing the border per day for a long time now. So Biden is saying that, yeah, that it would go into effect immediately. He wouldn't wait at all. It would go into effect the minute that the bill is signed, right? So Langford's pointing that out. He's like, the 5,000 number is irrelevant. Pete, the right-wing media and the other politicians are saying we're gonna let in 5,000 people a day. That's not true at all. We're gonna close the border immediately as soon as we sign this. Who cares what's true, brother? You don't get it? MAGA world doesn't care at all what's true. Right-wing media is filled with 100% liars. So they brainwash them, like the voters themselves. They don't know what's going on. They listen to Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, Mark Levin, etc. They listen to Fox. They have all the wrong information. So that's the number one problem.
Yeah.
And then Chris Murphy, Democratic senator, had one of my favorite quotes here, where he was like, well, look, we don't know what the status is now. I mean, they wanted this bill and we gave them the bill, and Langford's got a bunch of Republicans on his side, so let's see how it turns out. Are you serious? Brother, it's already dead. There's no how it turns out. Gee, I wonder if the Republican senators will stand up to Trump and actually vote against him and with you guys on this bill. These guys are amazing.
No,
they have no idea what's happening in the country.
It is amazing, but I think that some portion of Republican voters have caught on to what's happening. They've realized that there's like politics at play, and there are Republicans who have been whining about immigration but are now serving as obstructionists. And so over the weekend, Senator Ted Cruz, in an effort to kind of defend himself as serving as one of those obstructionists, is like, yeah, we don't really need any legislation. I mean, there are already laws on the books that would allow Biden to act unilaterally. No, there aren't. He just made that up, completely made that up. Okay, Biden is not a dictator. We live in a democracy. The way our government works is actually pretty simple. You have Congress, maybe taking a little bit of time away from their dorky podcasts and their fundraising, working on and passing legislation, which the President of the United States then signs into law and then acts on it. You can't just unilaterally decide to shut down the border. But Trump was able to do that by declaring an emergency due to COVID. But there was a very clear emergency there. After COVID was over, the courts got involved and were like, listen, Title 42, you can't move forward with that because COVID's over. You can't just shut down the border citing the coronavirus pandemic. So Biden had no choice. He had to open the border again. But in order to change immigration laws, you need Congress to change immigration laws. And they're unwilling to do that for politics.
And they don't understand how the system works. They don't care. Oh, the Supreme Court ordered him. They're like, who cares? Why doesn't he just ignore the law? We do it all the time. Oh, the Supreme Court ordered Texas to listen to the federal government on the border issue. Who cares? Just don't listen to the Supreme Court. Rule of law is for suckers. No. Rule of law is for libs when we're pretending that we care about justice and we crush them. Applied to us? No. Law should never be applied to right wingers. All right. Anyway, overall, I don't mind that they killed this bill. Like
I mean, it was a handout to Republicans.
It was the Republicans wanted the border stuff. I don't want that. I have a different solution for the problem at the border. There is a real problem, but my solution isn't the weirdo draconian Republican solution. Oh well, what else was in the bill? Funding to Ukraine and Israel. I mean, funding to Ukraine is questionable, but 60 billion, and we don't have enough money for paid family leave and higher wages, et cetera, right? And 14 billion to Israel. How many Palestinians do they have to kill? Jesus, we already give them 4 billion a year and they kill 26,000, and they're not anywhere near done. If we give them 14 billion, are they gonna kill 75,000, 200,000? Remember, the great majority of those are civilians, totally innocent. And we're gonna fund all that. But if you're excited, oh good, at least they killed the nonsense aid to Israel to kill more Palestinians. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, says, well, we could pass just the Israel one. Oh, did I mention one of his biggest donors is AIPAC? Don't mention donors, don't mention lobbyists. There are none in DC. And Mike Johnson says, okay, just strip everything else, give the money to Israel without any conditions or any questions, because my donors told me to. I mean, because the American people want it. No, they don't. And the only other provision he proposes, cut funding to the IRS so they can't audit rich people. There you go, that's the Republican Party. That's who they are. Bunch of zealots, don't care about the facts at all. They attack their own for trying to actually do something about the borders, do something productive, they'll rip your head off.
Yep.
Okay, you have to have undying loyalty to Trump and Israel and the rich. Enjoy your party.
Well, let's move on to conservative media, because all those defamation lawsuits that we were talking about following the 2020 presidential election, well, they're continuing. So let's start with this.
Voting technology company Smartmatic alleges that executives at the pro-Trump network, One America News, or OAN, may have, quote, engaged in criminal activities while promoting lies about the 2020 election. Smartmatic is currently suing OAN, Newsmax, and Fox News for spreading false claims about their voting machines and voter fraud during that election.
Voting technology company Smartmatic, which did in fact file a lawsuit against right-wing media outlet OAN, is now making some pretty explosive allegations about the channel, basically colluding with Trump campaign officials in an attempt to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Now, as I give you these details, I think you should consider whether what they're alleging OAN of doing is going to help them with the defamation claims, because I think this could actually be counterproductive for what Smartmatic wants to do. But nonetheless, here's what they're claiming. On January 8th, 2021, the president of the far-right network, One America News, sent a potentially explosive email to former Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell with a spreadsheet claiming to contain passwords of employees from the voting technology company Smartmatic, according to court filings. The filings allege that Charles Herring, the president of OAN, sent the information to Trump lawyer Sidney Powell while she and other Trump aides were attempting to breach voting systems to collect evidence of false fraud. So remember, Sidney Powell was caught breaking into those machines in Georgia. That was part of the reason why she was indicted in the election interference case in the state of Georgia. But if OAN somehow acquired the passwords to all these employees working at Smartmatic and then handed it over to Sidney Powell to investigate, wouldn't that mean that OAN was really under the impression that the election was stolen? And then wouldn't that go against a defamation lawsuit? Because you have to prove actual malice.
That's interesting. Well, okay, so number one, that's probably a better point than any point that OAN's lawyers are gonna make.
Sorry,
but
I didn't mean to help.
No, that's okay. Two, yeah, no, I could see a scenario where that isn't the only logical option, right? So it could be that OAN thought, yeah, we obviously lost, but Smartmatic is saying that we lost, and I hate them. If we could just shut them up, then we could pretend we won. You know what? Here's our passwords. Just mess them up. Do whatever you have to do to them to get them to stop saying that we lost the election, because then we won't be able to do our propaganda right. Okay, and yeah, I could prove further malice.
Right, that's true. That is true.
So, but that's for the courts to adjudicate. No problem. Good luck to them. So, look, guys, I know for Trump fans, the fact that he lost 60 court cases and never presented one piece of evidence, irrelevant. Somehow they know because of the mules and stuff. And the fact that Fox News paid $787 million because they admitted they lied about how Trump had won when he hadn't won. You think they wanted to lose $800 million? They just voluntarily did that, even though they were right that Trump had won. Okay, that's another one. But look, OAN and Newsmax, et cetera, they don't have $800 million.
No, they're not Fox News, right?
So there's a good chance OAN will be bankrupted by this lawsuit, period, gone, obliterated, okay? So we'll see, they've been hanging around like cockroaches this whole time, lying and lying and lying, spreading hate and fear, et cetera. But as Trump is finding out, the American justice system is real. And when you get a judgment against you, as Alex Jones is finding out, you're gonna have to suspend a lot of things you were doing. So let's find out how they tried to hide them. Look, Alex Jones can hide the money, and Trump might be able to hide some of the money, but you can't hide a network, right? So either OAN's on air or it isn't. So if they get a giant judgment against them, I don't know how they could continue because they're not that rich. And they're probably gonna get a giant judgment against them because they were definitely lying.
So we'll see how it plays out. And I wanna be like upfront about how there is no indication about where that information on passwords for the Smartmatic employees came from, right? I feel like that should be investigated. How did they get all of those passwords? Was there any type of hacking incident? That's what I would want answers to. But the whole reason why Smartmatic's lawyers have come forward with these explosive allegations is because they believe that OAN is not being forthright in the discovery process and they're not providing the documents that are asked of them. So we'll see how this case develops, how it plays out, but it isn't looking so great for OAN, and the fact that they had these spreadsheets of employee information and passwords, I think is concerning in and of itself. So we'll see what happens. For now though, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I really want to talk about one of the rare instances where Tim Pool shut up one of his guests who was apparently engaging in violent rhetoric. I want to give him credit for doing that. And then later in the show, we'll also talk about Sean Hannity celebrating a stunning stock market under Trump, but refusing to do the same under Biden. It's a perfect example of the partisan brain rot that just infects cable news. I don't think it's helpful to the country, and I'll tell you why when we return.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
All right, let's go to YouTube members first. Georgie Golden Shekel writes in about Pelosi. Isn't she just so brilliant the way she knows where to invest? Very, very intelligent. Cynthia Moon says, yes, thank you, TYT, for showing this. This is what I was talking about in my last comment. Love, Truth, and Freedom says, we love you, TYT. Who's that says, I like it when you point out the elephant in the room with truth. Always good to this guy. Thank you for that, we appreciate it. Box says, it's wild to think that Pelosi thinks that you have to be paid for an opinion.
I know, that is such a good point.
Good point, Box, good point.
That's such a classic case of projection.
Yes. You know what? $100 Blue Apron gift card.
You deserve it.
Okay.
You definitely deserve it.
So we're giving out gifts if you sign up for an annual subscription or give 50 bucks on tyt.com/join. But we still have some of those Blue Apron gift cards left over, so you get that on top as well. So gifts for everyone apparently. But it's a great point. David Tyler wrote in, families had to buy body armor for the troops who went to Iraq and Afghanistan. That's how much they care about our troops, to Anna's earlier point.
That's insane, that's insane.
It is, and the whole time the Republicans were like, well, we support the troops. The Chicken Fried Dragon said, the weapons we are sending to Israel could end up in the hands of Hamas. Therefore, we should immediately stop sending all weapons to the IDF. Another great point. Okay, so I mean, look, we invaded Afghanistan, then we left a bunch of weapons behind. The Taliban have it now. So should we defund the entire Pentagon? We're just asking questions. This is the new standard according to Israel. So let's just keep it, consistent. All right, Jonathan Hahn had the point about the IDF distributing the aid in the trucks, but they can't. They'd be sitting ducks, so we can't do that. Tech Nauseated says, MAGA idiots are posting bad photoshops of Nikki Haley in Native American headdresses and makeup. If you're going to be racist, at least get the race or ethnic group right. Her parents are from the country of India. Did we think the MAGA guys, Look, I told you, half of MAGA, I've said 100 times, hates corruption, etc. But the other half that thinks that Nikki Haley's a Native American, what am I going to do with you guys? Or a Muslim? By the way, Vivek found that out. He's like, I'm with you guys. White people are awesome. Oh, the white replacement theory. And some of the voters we talked to said they didn't vote for him because he was a Muslim. Oops. So of course, not Muslim. Not that that makes any difference. Anyways, Richie at Poor says a significant army doesn't mean anything. Just ask Russia. Iran has a competent military with modern capabilities. That's what makes this an unwinnable situation. Totally right. Sortalim writes in, and I can't thank you enough for covering news every single day while being authentic and with integrity. I respect you and the light you bring to this very great world. Thomas J343 says, Cenk, you're truly a genius. Hold. For example, you hired John and Anna way back over a decade ago, and look at them now. They're the best news hosts on any platform or news channel I've ever seen in my lifetime.
What's going on? You guys are being too nice to us today.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
A rare story where I might be giving Tim Pool a little bit of credit. So let's get to it.
I think it's only fair that I don't take the heat for what you said, Jesse, and I'm not trying to be, but I'm getting people attacking my character now for having had to take the show down because you made 2 allusions to killing people. So I'm not trying to be a right now, but like I've got 500 messages of like, what you're doing, why you're taking the show down, are you with us, you're trying to make money.
So I thought YouTube took the show down.
No, I had to take the show down.
Okay.
I had to take the show down because you made 2 allusions within like the span of a couple minutes to murdering people.
Who is that man and what has he done with Tim Pool? That was incredible and honestly not expected at all. But nonetheless, you just watched Tim Pool basically tell his guest, a guy named Jesse Kelly, to basically tone down his violent rhetoric. But as Pool is about to explain, this isn't a new problem. It's apparently one that he ends up dealing with quite often. So let's watch more of this interaction and then I'll fill you in on the details as we know them. Let's watch.
After I explicitly stated in the pre-show, do not make allusions to violence, then went on to explain, we keep having people come here and saying they want people killed or people should kill people or they can be killed or things like that.
Tim, yes, thank you. Look, this is all I want from Tim Pool, right? And by the way, anyone on, he doesn't think he's right wing, whatever, fine. I'll take that at face value, even though he says things that are kind of right wing sometimes. Any show, any independent outlet, like please stop egging on civil war. Please stop egging on violence. We need to find a way to tone things down a little bit. People are gonna disagree politically for sure, but we shouldn't be barreling toward violence where Americans literally fight one another. That would be a disaster. And so that like very strong response to Jesse Kelly is kind of incredible. And I'll get into what he allegedly said in just a moment, but Cenk, jump in.
Yeah, okay. So half credit at most. So he explains, and he's right about this. He's like, look, if you say you want to kill specific people, that is illegal. So if we put it up on a platform, including Rumble, which is very right wing, they're gonna make us take it down. There's no question about it, okay? Because they cannot allow illegal things on their platform. So don't do that because it makes me take down the show and then my audience yells at me and they come up with conspiracy theories. Gee, a right winger's coming up with conspiracy theories on why you took it down. So shocking. And what does that do? That costs him money.
Good.
And he doesn't want to lose the money.
Good.
And I'm not blaming him. That makes sense. Well, you can't do, if you have to take down every show you ever did, you can't forget making money. You can't exist as a show, right? So yes, I'll give him the half credit that Anna's giving him. He's pulling that back, and I don't even I'm not even taking away too much credit because he's doing it because otherwise there is no show, right? But I'm not giving him any credit on violence overall. I mean, look at his background. There's the sword and the gun. I've been at his compound and it's complicated. So I'll give you the nuance, but there's guns everywhere. Every wall has tons of weaponry, right? And Tim makes reference to the Civil War hundreds of times.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a moment. But look, we live in America, and whether you like it or not, people love guns. People see guns as like something that they engage in for a hobby. So like simply having guns in your background, I don't think is advocating for violence. Others might disagree, and that's your right to disagree.
I know, but Anna, hold on. So if I said he has guns in the background, hence he's definitely in favor of violence, you could make the point that you're making. But for him to be horrified that there might be a reference to a shooting when the whole place is built. I mean, like I walked out of there thinking, and they were good to me. And so there's the nuance. Like, it was a good conversation. I massively disagree with him on his right-wing points. We actually agreed that on corruption and how much it sucks and how much the establishment sucks on that front. So I'm not giving you a black and white view, and I'm glad they invited me. And it was interesting, and we had a little bit of sushi together and all of that, right?
Oh, look at you!
Oh my God!
Hobnobbing with Tim Pool.
Yeah. So look, guys, I'm giving you the full picture, but at the same time, to say like, oh, I can't believe anybody who was for shooting people. There's guns everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, at some point, somebody, and when everybody on the right uses talking points of, oh, you got to stand up to the tyranny of government. And what do you think happens when you stand up to the tyranny of government? How do you do that? And you say, you need my guns. Well, what are you going to do with a gun? You're not going to shoot flowers out of it. You're going to shoot bullets out of it. And by the way, if they could, would they say to kill specific people? Well, they do it even when they're not allowed to.
Okay, but look, let's just get to the next video because I think it's important to understand what Jesse Kelly allegedly said. The conversation took place last Friday, and Tim Pool has edited out whatever it is that he said that was objectionable. So we don't know for sure what he said. But in the next clip, Tim Pool apparently describes what Jesse Kelly had said.
18 minutes into the show, you had made two allusions to, one was the helicopter thrown over the Pacific Ocean. That's kind of like a, we're gonna get hit for that probably, but we'll see what happens. But then you said you can go kill the human smugglers for all I care, and it's.
So I'm guessing that they were talking about immigration when the questionable remarks were made by Jesse Kelly. Look, the other thing that I don't think you're giving him enough credit on, and look, people are gonna get mad at me for giving Tim Pool too much credit. Go ahead, get mad at me. You can at me as much as you want. He is making this statement to Jesse Kelly's face on his show. He didn't pull him aside and have like a quiet talk with him. He wanted to make a statement, and he made a statement in a very public way. So it wasn't just a statement to Jesse Kelly, it was kind of a statement to anyone else who comes on his show and advocates for violence.
It's, again, at best half credit, and I'll tell you why. Because, no, but Anna, hold on.
Okay.
So because he said right there, my fans are yelling at me, and I want to clarify it's not me, it's him. So yeah, he's saying it publicly because otherwise his fans are going to have conspiracy theories about how he's now working with Mr. Google and has married Mrs. YouTube. And that's when they took it down together, when otherwise they would have had a nice orgiastic violence fest, and it's all Tim's fault. So he's saying it's not my fault, it's that guy's fault, and it's the platform's fault. So that's why he's saying it publicly. And I would argue, and again, I've agreed with Tim Pool on some things, and I'm open to those conversations. But on the issue of violence, I think Anna's gonna show you the tweets here. I think what Tim's saying is be more subtle. Like, don't say you're gonna kill specific people because that's illegal. Say, oh, wouldn't it be amazing or terrible if we all killed each other like in a giant civil war?
Yeah, so he does tweet and talk about civil war quite a bit. So here is a collection of tweets from Tim Pool. I don't even think this is all of them, where he mentions civil war. Some of these tweets are worse than others. Let me give you a few examples. Let's put this up. Let's put this graphic up. So it's hard to read on the screen, but I'll read a few of them for you. The very last one says, "Yep, that's it, civil war. They refuse to back down. They are actually insane." And there's a lot of like, oh, they did something bad to our preferred politicians, namely Donald Trump, and as a result, civil war. This is inching us closer to civil war.
Come on, Tim, you're telling me that doesn't egg people on to do something about it violently?
I just want him to stop with that, okay? If this is a new day in America and Tim Pool has decided, okay, I gotta tone down my rhetoric because this is actually encouraging people, then great, great.
Yes.
All of us make mistakes, especially in media. And then we realize, okay, my rhetoric needs to be toned down a little bit because it's actually hurting more than it's helping. If he's in that phase of his life, I'm all for it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so look, there's a giant difference, and that's why I appreciated the one that Anna read. When you say, and as we've said on the show, hey guys, this is getting crazy. Look at this poll, 41% of Republicans believe that we should resort to violence, but look, over like around 30% of Democrats think the same thing. And then we say like that, I'm worried about a civil war, don't do that. As opposed to, yep, that's it, civil war, they refuse to back down. That's saying you should do civil war. You could pretend that you're not saying that, but that's what that sounds like.
It's at least a justification for civil war, right?
Yeah, and the left is talking about civil war in terms of, oh God, I hope that doesn't happen. That's crazy, right? The right is talking about it like, who can't wait, right? When they have all those guns, they got to use it for something. Keep it real, keep it real. You could all pretend to be peaceniks and that you've never thought of shooting anyone on the right. Wink, sure, sure, sure.
All right, let's move on to Sean Hannity.
Stocks did hit an all-time high. What did we learn last week is that the stock market impacts 8% of Americans. It does not impact the other 92%. It's one of the main reasons I've never used it as any kind of real barometer in terms of the health of our economy.
You sure about that, Sean? Because if I recall correctly, and I do have the receipts, you loved pointing at how well the stock market was doing under Trump in order to celebrate his handling of the economy. We'll get to that in just a moment. But overall, I actually agree with what Hannity said there. The stock market's performance should not be an indicator of how well the economy is doing, given the fact that a lot of Americans are not invested in the stock market. But nonetheless, he wanted to downplay the importance of the stock market after the S&P 500 hit an all-time high on January 19th. Unfortunately for him, Media Matters for America took the liberty of basically compiling a massive list of all the times he praised the stock market during the Trump administration in an effort to give the former president a ton of credit for how he handled the economy. So here are a few examples, and keep an eye on the scrolling list to the side of Hannity.
And of course, members of the lazy destroy Trump media aren't interested in doing their job. Stock market, again, all-time high. Today's economic news is more than phenomenal. We have an economy that is roaring and booming like never before. Look at these numbers. They speak for themselves. The stock market is soaring.
He thought it was a really important indicator, Cenk, under Donald Trump, but not so much under Biden.
These guys crack me up because, first of all, guys, you're on tape. You're on tape having said the earlier stuff, right? Like, you think that we're not gonna find it, Media Matters isn't gonna find it, randos online aren't gonna find it. Amazing. The second reason why they're hilarious is because now Sean Hannity all of a sudden cares about the average American. And he found out that 92% of you don't have any money in the stock market. He just found that out. When the entire time, him and everyone else on Fox News, and to be fair, everyone on MSNBC and CNN obsessed about the stock market. Stock market's up, stock market's the most important thing in the world, right? And now all of a sudden he's a humanitarian. He's like, did you know that 92% of you don't even have any money? We've been doing all this programming just for the rich? Yeah, Sean, we knew.
So the wealthiest 10% of Americans now own 89% of all US stocks held by households. So that's really important to know because he's actually right when he downplays the performance of the stock market as an indicator of how well the economy is doing. But with that said, it seems as though he might have come across the reporting done by Media Matters on his little double standard in regard to the stock market, because soon after he addressed it in an interesting way. So let's take a look at that.
You know, somebody actually, James sent me a thing, Hannity, you did tout the Trump stock market when it broke a record. I said, yeah, I did, but I also had the same caveat I have now. It's not my biggest barometer about how people in this country are doing.
So he's half telling the truth there. It's just that the times where he downplayed the stock market was when the stock market was doing poorly under Donald Trump.
He's such a joke.
Here's some examples.
I've never been the person that says, and I say it on my radio show a lot, that says the barometer of an economy is the stock market. You know what's interesting? I'm not a big stock market guy. I never use that as my biggest barometer. We're watching it fall. When we get through this, which we will, I expect the market would rise.
So those clips were from March of 2020 when the stock market was doing poorly for obvious reasons. That's when the COVID lockdowns happened.
Now you saw the videos with your own eyes. So let's just review though. When the stock market was doing poorly under Trump, it doesn't count. When it's doing great under Biden, it doesn't count. When it was doing great under Trump, it counts. It counts. Look at it, stock market all-time high. That's it. Trump's the greatest person on earth. Stock market's super high. We all love the stock market. Stock market's the only important thing. As soon as it goes down under Trump, I don't know. I never cared about the stock market. Oh, it's sky high under Biden. I never cared about it. Never cared about it. Come on, what a joke.
In our members only post game, I'm gonna tell you how Donald Trump has decided to take credit for how well the stock market is doing today. tyt.com/join to become a member to find out what he had to say about that. It is incredible, to say the least. So, anyway.
Right, we'll see you there. And also remember, you can join through tyt.com/join. And if you do an annual membership today, you'll get a gift. We'll see you soon.